I recently went to an art show and I saw some pieces that were done using ampersand scratchboard, and I just had to order some. They looked really interesting and the contrast was super intense and it just reminded me of my childhood. So I just went ahead and ordered some. Ampersand scratchboard is made with a layer of white clay with some black India ink sprayed over the top of that. So there are various tools and ways to scrape away that ink on the surface to reveal that white clay underneath. Ampersand make a few tools themselves, but you can also use things like X-Acto knives or slice tools or scourers or anything that's kind of a rough or sharp shape to make different marks. One of the tools that Ampersand sells is a little bit softer and it allows you to remove a little of the black but not all of it, which helps create that kind of mid-tone value and softer blends. Some of the tools you can use to create fine lines or use it slightly to the side to remove larger areas more quickly. There's also a kind of scourer that comes with the set if you want to remove larger areas. So what I found when working with the scratchboard, it is a little odd to be working backwards. Like if you're working on white paper, you'd be adding your shadows and midtones to it, but obviously this is reversed. So you have to leave the darkest parts and then add the highlights. So that was a really simple way of explaining it, but it does take a little bit of getting used to. So the way that I've kind of worked out how to do this is by using a really light hand in the first layer, where I'm just removing a little bit of that black ink. So it's more of a mid-tone. I'm not removing enough to get that super white crisp line there. So I'm kind of blocking in the mid-tones to start with, and then I will go over the top with another layer where I scrape back even more, pulling out those brighter highlights and details in the following layer. And I find that process works quite well to add a little bit more depth, and it's not just like a stark black and white image without any mid-tones in there. But I have only done 2 pieces using the scratch board, so of course I've got a lot more to learn, and I'm sure there are better techniques out there that I will pick up along the way. Something that I didn't realize when I was looking into scratchboard is that you can actually fix your mistakes very, very easily, and that's something that I didn't think that you'd be able to do with the scratchboard. So you can fix mistakes with pens and fine liners or brush pens. So you basically just come over the white bit that you want to make black again, and it pretty much replaces that ink, where you can scrape back again over the top of that if you want to reveal some of that white again. So if you're going to do that and you're worried about the archival quality of your artwork, and then obviously you want to go and find some archival pens to do that with. Some of the pens and the brush pens do leave a little bit of a shine to it, and also fingerprints and other things tend to make marks on the scratchboard as well, but I find that once you varnish the piece, any sort of shiny bits or uneven parts of the surface gets evened out a little bit, so you really don't notice that much. But during the process, it is really obvious that there are shiny parts there. You can also use the Ampersand Scratchboard Black Repair ink to fix any spots. So that's a specific ink that Ampersand makes for this reason. I haven't used it yet personally, but I did order some to try. And they also have inks that come in a variety of colors as well, so you can actually mix them to paint over the top of your scratchboard, creating some color in your artwork as well. So the ink doesn't actually change the color of the black parts, it just tints the white areas. You can also use other mediums to colour your piece. I actually used some Derwent Inktense blocks to add a touch of colour to this one at the end, because I was impatient and didn't want to wait for the inks, but it did work quite well. And I have read a few articles about other artists using things like coloured pencil or watercolour to add some colour as well, so I do think there's a lot of room to play around with this. People seem to think that scratchboard is very unforgiving, but I found it to be the opposite actually, because you can scratch some lines, fix any mistakes with the black ink, and then come back through and add more marks if you need to. It's actually quite forgiving in comparison to other mediums. When I was doing research, people recommend using a satin spray varnish because gloss doesn't seem to lay down as evenly. So I tried with a few light layers of some Winsor & Newton satin spray varnish, but it seemed to leave really obvious dots on the black part. I ended up doing a few light layers of Gamvar Satin Varnish, which is a liquid varnish, letting it dry in between until the dots were gone. But there were some patches that looked shinier than others. So I did some more research and people seem to favour the Golden Satin Spray Varnish, so I'll need to get some of that and do a few more tests with the varnishes, but I think it will also depend on the medium you use to colour your piece as to what varnish is going to work, and whether you can use a liquid varnish or a spray varnish. If you're interested in black and white mediums, I have this charcoal tutorial in the top corner with some really useful tips, so click on that and I'll see you over there.